The applause thundered like a wave, the stage lights blindingly bright. The 99th Global Youth Innovation Summit was underway in Toronto. Outstanding young people from over 20 countries were taking the stage one by one, holding their trophies high, their smiles beaming with pride. The impeccably dressed host, speaking fluent English, introduced the nationality and achievements of each award winner. Below the stage, a sea of media aimed their zoom lenses, flashes firing relentlessly. When it was her turn, the host announced with a smile, "And now, please welcome our winner from the United States, one of the leading voices from North America, Allara." The cheering audience faltered for a moment, especially a group of Asian Canadian scholars sitting in the front row. All eyes locked onto the stage. The cameras panned to Allara. She rose slowly and walked toward the podium, her frame slender, her expression neutral, but her steps unwavering. She didn't accept the trophy, nor did she extend a hand to the host. Instead, she took a neatly folded piece of cloth from her jacket pocket. It was the Canadian maple leaf, the iconic red, white, and red pattern, clean and crisp. She held the flag up before the live cameras, before the eyes of the world, and then, slowly, she tore it. Inch by inch, she ripped the fabric apart. In the next second, the entire hall fell dead silent, like a graveyard. No one made a sound. The host's jaw dropped. He watched as she let the tattered pieces of the flag fall to the floor, then turned to face the crowd. She said, "If you refuse to let me represent Canada, then I'd rather tear this flag apart with my own hands." In that instant, every eye, every camera lens was fixed on her, unmoving. Allara was a thorn that grew on land that refused to bow. No one knew when her backbone had become so strong, or when she had aged beyond her years, but everyone who knew her remembered that she had never bowed to anyone. She was born into an ordinary family in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Her father was a technician, her mother an elementary school teacher. A gifted student from a young age, she often stood at the front of the class to answer questions, her eyes fixed on the teacher, never a hint of nervousness. She wasn't loud or a troublemaker, but her peers found her difficult to approach. She often wrote sharp, incisive articles for the school newspaper, once describing the education system as a frog being slowly boiled in lukewarm water. After a complaint was filed, her teacher called her in for a talk. She responded calmly, "I was just telling the truth. I won't accept an education that teaches us to be silent." At 17, she represented her school at the National Science Fair and won first place, earning the National Youth Excellence Award and praise from the Ministry of Education. On stage that day, she said, "Canadian innovators are not just resource extractors for the world's factories. We are the independent spirit of engineers who think for ourselves." This sentence was clipped and went viral, sparking a polarized debate online. Some said she was too sharp-tongued, lacking tact. Others said she voiced what many young people wanted to say but never dared. At 18, she received a full scholarship to ETH Zurich, a prestigious science and technology university in Switzerland. The summer before she left, she hugged her parents at the airport. Her mother secretly pressed a small flag into her hand, the Canadian maple leaf. She nodded, took it, and tucked it into the bottom of her backpack without a word. She knew that this small symbol could bring unnecessary trouble in the future, but she knew even better that what she represented wasn't a political slogan, but the roots that grew within her. The first 6 months after arriving in Switzerland were a struggle to adapt to the language, culture, food, and weather. Everything was different from what she had imagined. She was the only Canadian student in her program. When she introduced herself, people would often ask, without thinking, "Oh, so you're American?" She would always reply, "No, I'm Canadian." This answer was sometimes met with a friendly smile, but other times with a frown and an argument. A French PhD student once said to her sarcastically in front of others during a group presentation, "A country known for hockey and maple syrup has high-tech industries?" She listened but didn't argue. She simply pulled up a diagram of the world's artificial intelligence research hubs, pointed to the cluster in Canada, and said, "A significant portion of the foundational AI research the world uses was developed right here." After that day, he never said another word, and her group received the top grade in the class. Everyone stood up and applauded. In her second year, she designed a model for improving low-temperature semiconductor manufacturing processes and unexpectedly won the gold medal in the university's internal innovation competition. One of the judges was a senior executive from a famous Swiss tech company. He immediately offered to recommend her for the upcoming International Global Youth Innovation Summit in Toronto. It was a high-level competition featuring young researchers from around the world, requiring multiple selection rounds. When she submitted her application, she didn't have high hopes. She had never seen the word Canada in the lists of past finalists. But the unexpected happened. She received an official invitation from the organizers. On it was her name, her thesis topic, and in the nationality field, she held the paper and stared at it for a long time. Then, she opened her laptop and wrote an email to confirm her participation. In the months preparing for the competition, she was unusually quiet. Her roommate thought she was sick. Every day, she woke at 5 a.m. and went to bed at 2 a.m., rehearsing her presentation, organizing data, and revising her slides over and over. She knew she wasn't just representing herself, but a place that many people overlooked. The day she was announced as a finalist, the Swiss media used 2 words to describe her: a revelation. The lights in the Toronto hall were painfully bright. The judging panel was formidable. The list of finalists was announced, and her name was last, as if added as an afterthought. When the host read her biography, he paused for a moment, then spoke the sentence that made her heart sink: "Allara, from the United States, one of our representatives from North America." She heard it clearly. It wasn't a typo, not a slip of the tongue, but a deliberate statement. She slowly rose, her hand reaching into her backpack, feeling the flag her mother had given her, which she had carried for over a year. The folds were still distinct, the edges slightly frayed. She walked onto the stage as if crossing 1,000 miles of land. The host held the trophy out to her. She didn't take it. The applause below began to quiet down. The cameras focused on her. She pulled the flag from her jacket, slowly unfolding it. A murmur went through the judging panel. The camera zoomed in, capturing her every move. Her right hand gripped a corner of the fabric and pulled. The flag tore into 2 pieces. The red, blue, and white of the original story was now the striking red and white of the maple leaf, looking as vivid as fresh blood under the spotlights. The host was so shocked he took a half step back. Below the stage, there was dead silence. The audience stared, unsure whether to applaud or condemn. She placed the torn fabric on the podium, stood straight, her voice level but sharp as a blade. "If you insist on misrepresenting the country I come from, then I can tear its symbol apart. But remember, you are the ones who tore it first, not me." The hall was silent. On the live stream, the chat feed exploded with question marks and exclamation points in multiple languages. On Twitter, hashtags number Canadian Tears flag and number Allara instantly shot to the top of the trending list. As she walked off the stage, she looked at no one except for an elderly woman standing in the distance, holding a phone and nodding silently. It was an old friend of her university professor, a retired academic who had once lived in Canada for a short time. That night, back in her hotel room, her social media accounts were a war zone. But she only opened one email, sent from the event's official organizers. It stated that the video of the awards ceremony would be suspended, the prize would be withheld, and the organizers would launch an investigation into whether her actions constituted a political provocation. She closed the email calmly and began preparing for her university presentation the next day. She knew the real award ceremony wasn't on that stage, but in every classroom, every lab, and in the process of changing the rules that lay ahead. The morning after the ceremony, the streets of Toronto were overcast, the sky a gray canvas that refused to brighten. Allara, wearing a gray coat, walked into the lab building on time. Her backpack felt light, her expression normal. Two international students at the door recognized her. One whispered her name, his eyes full of respect. She gave a small nod and kept walking. She had never liked being the center of attention, especially not under a politically charged spotlight. The news of her actions exploded on the day she returned to university. Media outlets began debating her actions at the ceremony. The focus was no longer on the award, but on the image of her tearing the flag. On social media, people with different stances edited the clip to fit their own narratives. Some said she acted out of principle and dignity. Others condemned her for deliberately provoking a sensitive political issue. The university quickly received an official notice from the organizers, stating that a contestant had made an unauthorized political statement at the ceremony, and that an investigation into her prize eligibility was underway, with the right to revoke it reserved. The university scheduled a meeting with her, ostensibly to coordinate and communicate. That afternoon, she walked into the Student Affairs office. The associate dean, a middle-aged man with a gentle but condescending tone, was clearly trying to persuade her. He handed her a carefully worded document to sign. In essence, it stated that her actions at the ceremony had no specific political intent and that she promised to respect the organizers' rules regarding country names. She read a few pages, said nothing, then slowly tore the document in two and placed it on the desk. The associate dean's smile froze on his face. He was silent for a moment, then gave a forced nod and said he would discuss the matter further with the university. She walked out of his office and dropped the paper scraps into a recycling bin in the hallway. Her fingers trembled slightly, but her steps never faltered. Silence was the solution they wanted, but she knew that if she remained silent, the next time, it wouldn't just be her nationality that was changed, but her voice, her name, or even her very existence. On the third day, a major Swiss newspaper published an exclusive interview with her. The headline read, "The Girl Who Refused to Be Named." The full-page article didn't take a clear stance, but one of her quotes was printed in bold, "I would rather accept the consequences than let others decide where I am from." This sentence ignited the debate. Some Swiss readers praised her courage in the comments, while critics accused her of bringing politics into the pure realm of academia. Meanwhile, her personal information began to be maliciously spread. Strangers dug up her high school photos. Some claimed to have found her family's occupations and address in Winnipeg, even posting screenshots of her parents' social media profiles. The internet was like a beast roused to anger, dragging her into an endless public trial. She deactivated all her social media accounts and changed her phone number. Every day, she left her dorm earlier and returned later. The laboratory became her only sanctuary. She poured all her energy into her research, using the calmest method to fight the noise outside. She started rebuilding her experimental model for nanomaterials, painstakingly refining her old project to create a more accurate simulation of low-temperature manufacturing processes. It was a massive task that almost no one would attempt alone, but she was willing. She knew that besides taking a stand, she had to prove she wasn't just someone who spouted empty slogans, and her efforts were eventually seen. A senior professor who had been on the awards ceremony committee personally recommended her to the university for a cross-disciplinary research project with the European Research Council. Although the university was hesitant, they had to forward the invitation letter. In it, the professor wrote, "I am interested in the problems she raises, which others avoid, and her solutions, which others have never considered. I am interested in her research, not her nationality." The night she received that letter, she walked alone on the streets of Zurich. As she crossed a bridge over the Limmat River, she stood for a long time. The starlight in the sky was faint, the wind brushing past her ears. For the first time, she felt that maybe, in some corner of the world, her persistence was not in vain. Weeks later, she gradually moved out of the eye of the storm. A group of academics from various Swiss universities signed a joint statement calling for respect for the true identities of international students and opposing the use of a single political standard to erase diversity. Some student representatives even organized an essay contest in the university journal on the topic, "Where I'm From, I Decide." The first issue's cover was a silhouette of her back, and the event organizers, who had previously announced the suspension of her award, finally changed their stance after a closed-door meeting. They stated that they would not penalize the contestants' actions and would respect cultural differences and regional naming conventions in future award lists. Some said she had won, but she knew this wasn't a victory, just a temporary truce. Her advisor told her privately, "The world isn't black and white. Many people don't misunderstand you. They just don't dare to stand with you." She nodded slightly but was never swayed. A few weeks later, she published an article titled "Name and Reality" in an academic journal. In it, she wrote, "If every name can be arbitrarily changed, then memory can also be erased. I am not protesting. I am simply refusing to be overwritten. I am Allara. I am from Canada. This is my reality, not someone else's opinion." This article sparked more debate among international scholars and led many who had been silent to openly express their support. A foreign professor even used her case as an example in class to discuss the boundaries between identity and academia. After the silence came the storm, and she stood at its center, never bowing her head. Spring arrived later than expected. The magnolias on campus were just beginning to bloom. Allara sat in a corner of the lab, the weak sunlight from the window hitting the edge of her laptop, creating a small patch of warmth. She typed intermittently, biting her lower lip as she prepared her presentation. In 3 days, she would attend the International Young Researchers Summit in Geneva. Participants came from over 30 countries and regions. She had initially declined the invitation. The letter arrived 2 months after the incident, and the organizers had not specified her nationality, simply using the term "participant from North America" to define her. She had encountered such vague language countless times. But strangely, a representative from the organizers later sent a personal letter saying they hoped to respect her self-identification of where she was from without compromise and would not censor her speech. This was an off-the-record promise, coordinated internally by the organizers. She hesitated for a long time before finally deciding to attend. She no longer wanted to be a person who troubled the world, but she wanted even less to be someone whose label the world could easily change. For this talk, she prepared only 8 minutes. No complex charts, no lengthy explanations. She would make only 2 points. Has technological development become detached from a humanistic standpoint? And can Canada be understood as its own entity? She stood on the stage in the Geneva Conference Hall wearing a dark blue suit, nothing special. She knew this wasn't a performance, it was a battlefield. She began by presenting Canada's contributions in recent years in manufacturing key electronic components, circuit design, and high-precision sensors, and pointed out the importance of this data in the global technology supply chain. The audience in the hall gradually fell silent. Then she changed her tone and delivered her most sensitive line. If Canada is a name that cannot be spoken, then should the technological contributions we provide also have their origins hidden? As soon as she finished, the hall was silent for a second. Then applause broke out. It wasn't thunderous, but it was sincere and weighty, like a drop of water falling into a deep well, its echo lingering. After the talk, she didn't stay to chat. She turned and walked out of the conference hall immediately. She was exhausted, but compared to before, it was a calm that came after release. When she returned to Zurich, she found she had become a key figure at the Geneva Forum. Though she tried to avoid interviews, clips of her speech were cited by several media outlets. Even more surprisingly, the host from Toronto, who had misidentified her, said at the end of his show, "This world doesn't always need to choose sides. Sometimes, choosing is simply about telling the truth." Allara says she is from Canada. Perhaps we should just listen to her finish instead of rushing to correct her. When she saw that sentence, she was silent for a long time, not because she was moved, but because she finally understood that persistence isn't always misunderstood. During that time, more and more universities abroad began to open a Canada option in their nationality registration systems, no longer listing it as a subregion. More students began to stand up and share similar experiences. Her story was like a fire that illuminated a problem that had been hidden. As for her, she gradually returned to her daily life. No more comments, no more clarifications. She knew what she had done was enough. The rest should be taken up by others. She applied for a research project that bypassed peer review. The topic, atomic level precision in low-temperature nanomaterial manufacturing. This was her area of expertise and the best way to escape the controversy. The day her application was approved, she told no one. She simply wrote a small line on a blank page of her notebook. I exist not because others acknowledge me, but because I remain myself. 2 months later, she received an anonymous letter from Canada. It contained only one sentence, with no sender's name. Thank you for not letting us be misnamed in front of the world. She looked at the letter, tears welling in her eyes. She slowly placed it in her drawer. In the end, her name was remembered. Not for an award, not for tearing a flag, not for a controversy, but because she made people begin to seriously confront a reality that Canada is not just a word on a map, not just a name spoken by others, but a place where people are born, a place people defend, and a place for which people are willing to accept all consequences. That flag was torn, but the vast land behind it was not shattered. It still stands in the wind, towers among the clouds. The ocean waves still crash upon its shores, and there are countless others like her, standing silently. If you are moved by her determination, please like this story so others can see it. Please leave your comments to support every name that refuses to be overwritten. And don't forget to subscribe. We will continue to bring you true and powerful stories,